Hello and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today, we'll be discussing the ongoing crisis between Israel and Hamas that has grabbed the world headlines around the world. In this program today, we'll be discussing the impact that the Hamas rockets and missiles that have affected southern Israel, particularly towns and cities across southern Israel, in which over 1 million Israelis live under the threat and the dark shadow of Iranian missiles. We'll also be discussing what does the Bible have to say and to able to lead us in this current conflict, and also we'll be talking about the victims of these missile attacks and what is it like for them going through that turmoil, going through those psychological problems of having to live with the threat of missiles and rockets on their communities. And for today's program, I'm joined by Rabbi Shmuel Bowman, who's the Executive Director of Operation Life Shield. Rabbi, it's always a pleasure to have a rabbi on the Middle East Report. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I think you've got an incredible background, that you were born and raised in Canada, then you made Aliyah, you served in the IDF, and now you're heading up an organisation that does tremendous work in helping to provide bomb shelters to vulnerable Jewish communities facing the threat of missile and rocket attacks on Israel. So where do you want to start? I'm going to start with your background.
Okay, thank you. I grew up born and raised in Toronto, Canada, in a home that was very, very concerned about Israel as well as world Jewry. From the time I was a kid, I was being taken by my parents to rallies for the rights and freedom of Soviet Jews so that they could express their beliefs and dream of being in Israel in a free way. And so that was the environment I grew up in. It was an activist environment. It was an environment of not sitting back and watching, but rather getting up and participating. So with that kind of a home to be raised in, I'm certainly grateful to my parents for being really my best teachers. I wound up going to Israel in 1990 during the crisis that was taking place with Saddam Hussein. And something that he had said, well, he had threatened to totally wipe Israel off the map. And, I believed him. I believe this man has demonstrated with his other warring actions that he has the ability to do what he says. And Simon, we've learned, the Jewish people have learned that when a tyrant, when a dictator threatens Israel, threatens the Jewish people, we've learned to pay attention, take it seriously. And so that happened with Saddam Hussein. I went over to Israel in the end of 1990, volunteered in the Israel Defense Forces, and was there for the Gulf War of January 1991, and found myself, there are no coincidences, and right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's all God. It's all God. And I found myself in a situation where literally Scud missiles were falling all around me, and I made a vow at that time, and that was, dear God, if I live through this, then I would like to live in Israel. And thank God I lived through it. It was pretty frightening. And we did some very, very important work. And a short while later, I met my wife. She's from the United States, but she was in Israel when I was in Israel. And we wound up getting married in the United States. And then in 1993, we made Aliyah. And now we live in Israel. We have 5 children, all Sabarim, all born in Israel. Fantastic. And my eldest son, Yoav, who's 17, is now looking at, he'll be going into the Army next year. So what seems like a rather short little period of time, a lot has happened. So that's that background. And as far as becoming a Jewish educator, becoming a rabbi, that was very much a calling. It was a calling to teach. It was a calling to lead. It was a calling to somehow make the Bible and everything that's happened since then relevant and personally meaningful to a younger generation. And as a result, I wound up spending a number of years working with the rabbi at Tel Aviv University. I headed and started the Hillel there, and worked for other organizations where the goal was use different, let's call it informal education, totally out of the box to try and make God's word relevant and meaningful.
That's amazing. Also, you told me something really interesting for the start of the program, that you also restore sacred Torah scrolls.
This is my passion. I'm a Torah scribe called a sofer in Hebrew, and our family has a long history of every generation in my family. There has been a Torah scribe, and it is definitely my passion. I'm excited about the Hebrew letters. I'm excited about sacred scrolls, whether it's writing something new or restoring something very ancient. For me, it's literally participating in God's message to the world and safeguarding it so that we can transmit it correctly to the next generation.
Yeah. Just before we get into the interview as well, is there something that you've discovered, some sort of ancient wisdom from reading some of these ancient Torah scrolls that you can share with us and the viewers?
Sure. Well, the ancient wisdom that comes through time and time again is the care of making every letter of God's transmission of the law and prophecy absolutely perfect. Precision. Making it correct. And this has been for me a great message in life, because, and we'll talk about this as we talk about the situation today, precision as when you write a letter so that one letter isn't confused with another letter. Precision is about not sitting on the fence. There's no blurring. There's no interpretation about, is it this letter or that letter? It has to be this or it has to be that. And for me, that's been a great lesson in life, but especially as we view the world today. There is no middle ground. There is no sitting on the fence. You have to take a position. And one of the things that the wisdom of the Hebrew letters has taught me, just one of many things, is exactly that. And so my rabbi, there's one, I'll give you an example. He used to talk about one particular letter, the letter of Vav. The letter Vav. The letter Vav is the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And I remember him once teaching for about an hour about how to correctly write the Vav and this and that. And finally, the last thing he said really hit home. He says, look, finally, after all is said and done, you have to look at this Vav and you have to ask yourself the following question. Is it or isn't it a Vav? And for me, I'm like, yes. That's the whole question. Am I in or am I out? Where do I stand on this subject? Where do I stand on that subject? To not have an opinion, okay? To be inactive is an action. To not have an opinion is a statement. And it's a great lesson that comes through in the transmission of the Torah.
That's incredible. I think a lot of our viewers and certainly could learn something from that because we're living in an age of apathy. But I really want to talk about the crisis now that's happening in Israel. Israel is currently engaged in a military operation offensive against the Hamas's terrorist infrastructure, in which we've seen, thanks to Hamas missiles, whole of southern Israel traumatized by these rockets and missiles that have been falling upon southern Israel for months. And in the last week, we've seen an escalation in the number of rockets and missile attacks. And now, thanks to the Iranian supplies Fahash 5, those missiles now have reached Tel Aviv and also Jerusalem, which means they're a game changer. But as a father and someone who's served in the IDF, how will the Israeli soldiers now and the reservists, which amounts to something like 75,000 Israeli reservists, have been called up, how must they be feeling now, thinking that they may have to go into Gaza in order to destroy the Hamas infrastructure?
Well, none of this happened overnight. This wasn't like, a few days ago, a group of, military leaders were sitting around having a cup of coffee saying, well, Moshe, what do you think we should do today? I don't know. Let's go into Gaza. Let's take out the chief, military guy for Hamas. None of this happened, right? None of this happened on the fly, as we say. Nothing happened last minute. A great deal of planning and preparation has gone into everything that's going on right now. Okay, people are not sitting around saying, "I don't know. What do you think? What's your best bet?" No, careful research, careful intelligence, careful scenario mock-ups have been done. We need to understand that for the last several years, pretty well every exercise that the IDF has been involved with has been preparing for this. Okay, so this isn't a sudden thing. And what are we preparing for? We're preparing for the fact that Israel cannot continue to live under these conditions, where you cannot go to work on a daily basis because you don't know if your company or your factory or your shop is going to be under attack, or whether or not your kids can't go to school. Or I'll give you very basic things, and I apologize if I'm going to be, a little bit rough around the edges, but go try. You've got 1 minute to go to the bathroom. That's it. Okay? You know that you need to go. Okay, and sometimes for many people, going to the bathroom is that few minutes of especially parents, have a little bit of respite in your day, a little bit of a break. No, you're looking at your watch and you're saying, I got 60 seconds to do what I need to do in here. Shower. What do you do about a shower? But sometimes it's very nice to have a nice, relaxing, hot shower, get in there, use the soap, use the brush. No, you've got 1 minute, you got 60 seconds to have a shower. Okay, these are the sort of things. Okay, those sound like very trivial things, but then they expand onward from there. Just yesterday, when 3 rockets, those long-range rockets, hit in my community. Okay, so I got an email this morning from my 15-and-a-half-year-old daughter, who was in her school, high school at the time, when the siren went off. There was great fear. There was screaming. There was crying. Why should we have to put up with this? And so we have known that we can't continue to put up with this, and so we're preparing for the right time in order to deal with it. Our soldiers are ready to go into Gaza if it's necessary, in order to stop this. Okay, because in many respects, the only way to really finish it is boots on the ground. Aerial bombardment can only work to a certain point. That's the history of battles. At the end of the day, you need to go in. It's not that it's a difficult decision. It's just we're going to see how it plays out. Right now, as of 2 hours ago, when I checked in with my news sources, there are ceasefire discussions going on, but that doesn't mean that the IDF has stopped its plan and its program, which is the correct course of action.
And you've done a lot of work in Ashkelon and Sderot, in other towns and cities in southern Israel, which have come under the attack of Hamas rockets and missiles. And in 2008, I visited Sderot, and you can see how the whole community is traumatized by these rockets and missiles. You can see the devastation caused by them. Thankfully, there hasn't been that many lives that have been taken in these missile and rocket attacks, which I believe is due to the grace of God and the divine providence and protection of the God of Israel upon her people. But what is it like for those communities that have been living under this daily barrage of rockets and missiles?
Well, when you're in a town like Sderot, you have a bomb shelter, okay, every few meters. So when I go to Sderot, and I'm down in that part of the country on a very regular basis, the reason being is because our organization, Operation Life Shield, which was established in 2007, has been to be the organization that raises funds in order to place desperately needed shelters into public spaces in Israel. And a great deal of our emphasis has been on the south, and has been that way since 2007. So we have been preparing for this. And so when we go down there, you get out of your car in Sderot, and the first thing you do is you look around. And you look around. Shelter, 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 shelter. Why? Because if I have to walk from where my car is to where the newspaper stand is, I need to know where is going to be the sequence of the next few shelters, so that when the siren goes off, and in Sderot I've only got a matter of seconds, okay, where do I go? It's a different consciousness. And that's become part of the life. I think everyone needs to understand that what that means on a practical basis is that you can't really ever have a long conversation with anybody without it being interrupted. You can't play a game of football without it being interrupted. Okay, everything is being interrupted, and that's what's been going on. There are children, think about this, there are children today who are 8, 9, 10 years old, okay? living in Sderot who have known nothing but code red sirens, who have known nothing but attacks on their homes their entire lives. Entire lives. Okay? There are teenagers today who their memory of growing up to present day is just about being under attack. I mean, this is craziness. This is madness. Absolutely. And it has its impact on other areas. You know, the chief social worker, for example, of a southern region in near the Sderot area, reported to me that the incidence of mature bedwetting, for example, is higher than the national average in southern Israel. Why? Because as tough as these teenagers want to be, or these preteens want to be, they take these fears to bed with them at night, and it comes out. Now, I don't know about you, but as a parent of 5 kids, you spend a lot of time, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night and you take your kids to the bathroom, and I mean, it's part of their own dignity, but it's also, right, it's part of growing up. And imagine now, okay, they can't hold it. Again, it sounds like a rather trivial matter, but as a parent, and for your viewers who are parents, I think they can relate to something like that. It really, really hurts.
Yeah, yeah. We've got a clip to go to now, and this is the rabbi in the Command and Control Center in Israel's southern city of Ashkelon, which has come under attack from Hamas's rockets and missiles.
Good evening. Ashkelon, it's a very nice place, sitting on the south side of Israel, along the beach, the Mediterranean Sea, not far from Gaza. In Ashkelon, it's about 130 people. 1,000 people, yeah, sorry, it's night. And most of them are working in the city and have a very good life along the beach. The only thing that make the life interesting here, that's the distance between Ashkelon and to the Gaza Strip. The distance between the north border of Gaza and the south part of the city, it's about 10 kilometers. Most of the time we are always, as you see, we holding the security services ready all along the day, even at the middle of the night, because we used to hear the alarms system working anytime. Most of the people are getting used to it, and most of them always know how to deal with the situation, to run to the shelters, getting into the houses.
Okay, so you have to be always ready, and that's exactly what this command center is all about. It's about being ready, and should a siren be sounded, and really that could happen at any time, a whole system goes into place.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what part of the reality of living in Ashkelon is all about. But I do need to emphasize that it is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah.
You're right on the ocean. Yoav and I were just on the beach just now before we got here. Yoav was taking some pictures, and it's just beautiful here. And so you have that wonderful quality way of life, which needs to be guarded because of the threat of Gaza next door.
Yeah, that's make the difference between Ashkelon from the other cities around here, because our neighbors from the south think that the good life at Ashkelon has been stops every 2 or 3 days, and we already get used to hear the alarm systems, and it's bother your life, because even if nothing happening, you're always waiting that something will happen. And they are launching Qassam missiles and Grad, it's a kind of Katyusha that make a very, very bad damage, and it can hit a house, a schoolyard, and it can hit everywhere. And we already had experience for long years, and people already suffered. And one side you have to keep your life, and from the other side you always watching yourself. And when you got someone that at school, always worried, you're always looking for a place to hide, and you get an experience because you always can prove yourself, and getting a how do you say, a solution. Always you find a solution, and people here is like soldiers.
Yes.
They always get be ready and get always be aware that something could happen every minute.
I want to introduce a couple of people who are with us today, if I may. We are here with Vered. Hi, Vered.
Hi.
Vered, can you tell us a little bit about what you do here?
I'm working in the security staff of the emergency room of the Ashkelon, and I'm here for the front of the people of Ashkelon.
So what are you looking out for? As you're looking at these screens in front of us, what's going to jump up at you and grab your attention?
All kind of stuff. It could be cars that in the wrong place, or teenagers drinking at the night. All kind of things, or alarms.
Or alarms. So anything that may be suspicious, anything from security, the kind of thing that would happen in any city, right? To the things that would not be happening in many cities, such as an attack. So you're basically watching over, making sure that the city of Ashkelon is a safe place.
Yes.
I'm Shmuel Bowman, and I'm with a wonderful group of people. I'm so glad that you joined us today on Communique. See you next time. Shalom from Ashkelon.
Good night.
Good night.
Welcome back to the Middle East Report. Shmuel, you make a pretty good news reporter there. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Looking at that, I mean, we saw there the security chief who's in charge of the security for Ashkelon, which is one of Israel's southern cities that's in the range of Hamas rockets and missiles. And really we saw the trauma in which over 9,000 Jewish people who had their homes, their businesses, their schools, their synagogues in Gaza were rooted out of that land in a unilateral move for peace. And since then, we've seen nothing but escalation and rockets as the situation has got worse. We've seen that Fatah was in control up until 2007. Then Hamas overthrew Fatah in a coup d'etat, are now in control of Gaza. And we've seen an escalation in those missiles and rocket attacks. How has a city like Ashkelon prepared its people for the current onslaught of the missiles that are hitting that city?
Right, so Ashkelon is a city of 122,000 people, which is a pretty good-sized city. As I mentioned before, it's a beautiful city with wonderful services and infrastructure. It's also a city that has attracted a lot of immigrants, especially recently. And so you'll find a real mix of population from some of the old-timers who've been there since the founding of the state. You have a lot of Ethiopians there, Russians. Basically, it's a real soup of of different people. People get along. There's wonderful music that comes out of Ashkelon, and as you can see from this. This is a video blog that my son and I do on a regular basis. Nothing very professional whatsoever, but the idea is to get the message out to our viewers and supporters. The city is ready, and they're always ready. This security room takes place several floors below the surface of the earth. It is manned 24 hours a day, and they have an entire system that goes into effect when there's an emergency crisis, such as rocket attacks. And as Yossi Grinfield, the gentleman who I was speaking with at the beginning, who is the security chief for Ashkelon, said, there has been a series of threes, a cycle of threes. And I invite your viewers to get out a calendar and check off on their calendar how this works in order to see every 3 days a number of rockets have been hitting Israel. This has been going on for years. Every 3 weeks, we call a barrage of rockets. And every 3 months, we have a mini war. Like clockwork, with a standard error of about maybe 2 weeks in either direction. Try it at home for yourself with a calendar. It's absolutely incredible. So it's not like, so we know. So Yossi Grinfield, who is the security chief, he knows full well what to expect. He knows if the last mini war happened 2.5 months ago, get ready. In the next 2 weeks, we're about to have another 200 to 300 rockets come in. So now, of course, the current situation is escalated much more drastically. But it didn't happen in a vacuum, and it didn't happen out of the blue. It was not a surprise. All those protesters and demonstrators who are very angry at Israel for responding, hello. It's not like we woke up one day and said, oh, I think we'll hit back Gaza really hard. No, we've been dealing with this. Go back to the records. Simply go back through the archives in the news reports, and you will see 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, this cycle of violence has been imposed on Israel.
Yeah. I mean, what I think a lot of people don't understand and don't comprehend, and when they see the mainstream media news reports, it's pretty much just really focusing on Gaza. There's no real news reports focusing on towns like Ashkelon or particularly Sderot, which is under the most fire of these rockets, looking and seeing how the communities are traumatized, how children are traumatized, and showing the impact that it's affecting over 1.5 million Israeli lives, going from schools, going to hospitals, people carrying out their daily lives. What was your response to that?
Yesterday, 112 Israelis were treated by Magen David Adom, by the ambulance services. 112 Israelis just yesterday, and that included everything from serious injury to shock and trauma. Okay? Now, shock and trauma, when someone, by the way, is diagnosed with shock, it's not like it doesn't mean they're upset. Okay? Shock is a clinical diagnosis. It is a shutdown of your organs. Okay? It is an inability to, in a sense, control yourself. And it's a clinical problem. It requires medical attention. 112 Israelis. And however, because we value life so much, and because we have an incredible program called the Home Front Defense Program, which it used to be called Civil Defense, and now it's called Home Front. It basically tells civilians how to respond during an attack. Simon, incredible detail, including a website, which is open for any viewer to look at. What do you do? How do you prepare for an attack? What kind of a space is best? If you don't have a shelter, what can you use in your home? Okay? To make sure that if you're driving in your car, as I was the other day when rockets hit, that you're supposed to pull over, get out of the car. If you can't get to a shelter, go on the ground and cover your head. All sorts of important information to do what? To save lives. That's been our emphasis. And you know what? We've responded. And we've done it in such a way so that, thank God, the amount of casualties, as horrible as they have been rather few. Okay? And we see what happens on the other side. The total opposite, the total disvalue of life, the total, in a sense, I would even say, celebration of death. Okay? I don't believe for a second the cries that go on when people get killed, because what are you doing having a kindergarten in Gaza on top of a rocket silo? What are you doing putting putting Grad missiles inside a mosque where people come to pray. I'm sorry. That says to me, you don't value life. And so, of course, we see tremendous tragedy happening over there, and that attracts attention. Simon, if there was a great death and destruction happening on the Israel side, I'm sure the mainstream media would have a great time viewing that. But I'm sorry, we value life, and so we try and keep that kind of tragedy to a minimum.
And we've got a very important clip now that looks at the impact of this conflict on Israeli children living in southern Israel under threat of Hamas's rockets and missiles.
We're here at a makeshift bomb shelter in Ashkelon, a city about 20 kilometers from the Gaza border. It's a place that has perpetually come under rocket fire, and today we wanted to give you an inside perspective, one from children. They have to spend now all day indoors because their schools are simply too dangerous. This group of 100 kids aged 4 to 14 are taking refuge in a synagogue-turned-bomb shelter located in the basement of a local Ashkelon hotel. Forget about studying. The goal here is to try to have fun and forget the winds of war blowing outside. Some are glued to the TV watching cartoons, others draw and color. The boys like playing board games and even kicking around a soccer ball. But don't let the fun facade fool you. These kids are keenly aware that they're hiding from deadly rockets.
And you listen, the boom is scary, but you don't know the people is okay, is not okay, your family is okay. Because it's scary, and you always you scared because you don't know you next or the people or your family or your friends is die or.
I feel a lot safer because after the Iron Dome brought to Ashkelon, the grads don't hit the ground, it stops by the air because the other bombs stop there from hitting the ground.
With its stellar performance of shooting down nearly 300 Gaza rockets, Iron Dome has brought children a sense of emotional relief. Eli Ben Michael is just 9, but he also speaks of the new anti-ballistic missile system, and surprisingly, politics. I feel good because I have friends here and Iron Dome protects me from all the enemies, he told me. But most important, I have God. I will be happy if there's peace between Gaza and Israel, if they can be friends and not enemies. Other kids seemed less confident, like 8-year-old Liam Amar. I feel safe here because it's a secure room, she told me, but I'm a little scared. The sirens are shocking. Dr. Asher Solomon, the deputy director of Ashkelon's Barzilai Medical Center, says 70% of the kids here won't be psychologically affected long term, but about 30% will show signs of post-traumatic stress disorder.
The problem is to find these quiet kids that somehow observe the situation, do not cope properly, and keep everything inside.
Getting kids to talk about what's happening, no matter how unpleasant, is how Dr. Solomon's team of therapists help.
In general, it should be a kind of a group therapy or a group discussion in order to release tension and to put things in order and to allow children to express themselves. In cases that we have more severe symptoms, we would basically give individual therapy to these kids, and that could be in various techniques and in various lengths.
The most severely affected children often have problems concentrating and sleeping. They can withdraw or conversely become aggressive. Some even develop regressive behavior, like wetting their beds. During my interview with Dr. Solomon, we got a taste of how the better adjusted kids respond to the rocket fire.
I think we have.
There's a siren, we gotta go.
Come inside.
Inside where?
Come from here.
Okay. Come, can you grab my bag? Thanks. Where do we go?
Let's first come down and take them downstairs.
Okay. We tried to get to the bomb shelter, but we were too far away. Oh, stand here? Okay. You want to pick it up? You hear the booms. Wait. You got it? Okay, we've just come inside now because we heard the siren and we just heard maybe 3 or 4 booms, right? And all the children, I want to point out, if we can pan over there, they're hanging out. They seem pretty calm. Some kids here told us they're so used to years of rocket attacks that it doesn't bother them anymore. Tova Zussman, an occupational therapist, oversees the kids here like she did back during the 2008 Gaza war. She says many kids have adjusted to life under rocket attacks, but like Dr. Solomon, she admits a few kids really struggle. We had a boy today who was very scared and we weren't able to calm him down, she told me. And so we had to call his mom to come get him, and that calmed him. In addition to the Israeli soldiers, these children are also paying a price for the fight against terrorists in Gaza. Many are working to make sure that price won't be too high. Jordana Miller, JN1, Ashkelon.
Hello and welcome back to the Middle East Report. Shmuel, I found that report disturbing, primarily because so many of these children living in Ashkelon and living in Sderot and other towns and cities and villages around Gaza in southern Israel have become normalized to these rocket attacks. And when the sirens go off, they don't pay any attention to it. This is not a normal state of affairs, and I don't believe any child should actually live through that.
No, exactly. It's a situation where someone is being hit in the face and being hit in the face and being hit in the face, and eventually you just say, you know what, I'm used to it. And we observe this and we say, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. No one should ever have to put up with this. This is not a normal way to grow up as a child, to live as an adult. How about the elderly? Okay, you've got also elderly who many of them have. Some of them are Holocaust survivors. Okay, they miraculously walked out of Auschwitz. They've been through wars in Israel. Their mobility is very limited. And now here they are. You hear that siren going on. Can you imagine what trauma they're going through when they hear that sound? What bad memories are resurfacing? So it's an issue that's affecting every segment of the population. And the fact that they are used to it, yeah, that's simply not appropriate. One of the things that we've been trying to do by placing shelters is, on the one hand, give people an opportunity to be comforted, so that on a daily basis, even when rockets haven't been blowing up around them, they at least, there's the shelter. I always know it's there nearby. Now I can proceed with my day. And when rockets are exploding around them, they have a place to go to. In all honesty, I honestly wish I was out of this line of business, because that would mean that we wouldn't need it anymore, and we could turn these shelters into the heaviest playrooms around. But in the meantime, we do. And in the meantime, people are living with it, and they are finding ways. It's amazing. People find ways of coping. Okay? Doesn't mean it's right.
Absolutely. And can you tell us about the very important work you're doing with Operation Life Shield, so you can explain to some of our viewers and the impact that your organisation has been able to have in probably saving and preserving so many lives?
Yes, thank God we've been given this opportunity to do this. It was founded by a group of friends in 2006 during the Second Lebanon War, when it became very, very clear that going to underground shelters for great lengths of time was not going to be a long-term solution. The Second Lebanon War, as you recall, took place for 30 days, in which 3,000 rockets, that's 100 rockets a day, slammed into northern Israel, displacing 300,000 Israelis into the center of the country. Those who stayed behind in the northern part of Israel lived through hell. It became clear to us as we met with the Home Front Command that a new solution needed to happen, so that if you and I were having a meeting or going out for a cup of coffee and the siren went off, we could put everything down, seek shelter nearby, let the danger pass, and go back and resume our lives. In other words, so we could live our life as normal as possible in an abnormal situation. And so the solution was to place very simple but very strong above-ground bomb shelters in public spaces in communities that were threatened by enemy rocket attacks. And that's basically been the entire idea of Operation Life Shield. We function because people who care about Israel, Jews and Christians all over the world who love Israel, help us to help others. And that's what we continue to do today. And yes, thank God our shelters have now at this point saved thousands of lives. And we still have a lot more work to do.
That's incredible. You're also a very deep spiritual man as well. What answers have you got for those people who are looking at this conflict and saying, well, where are the answers? I'm getting conflicting news reports from watching the mainstream media to understand what's going on. And what does the Word of God say, and how does the Word of God bring comfort to those Israelis that are under those threat of Hamas rockets and missiles?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, to rely on others, to be dependent on others is a mistake. You know, it doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter who's on 10 Downing Street. It just doesn't matter. That's not the issue. God has placed them there for a reason. Yes, God has placed Mr. Barack Obama back in the White House for a reason. The way the world looks right now is for a reason. And for us to be getting upset because it doesn't jive with what I would have wanted things to happen, too bad. That's the first thing. The second thing is to be complacent and to be just observers in what's going on in the world. That's also an answer, and that's an answer against doing something. I really believe with all my heart that we right now are sitting right on the page of chapter 4:14 of the book of Esther. Esther 4:14. Haman has come along from the tribe of Amalek, wants to destroy the Jewish people. Genocide. He's got plans for a Holocaust to take place in the entire world 2,500 years ago. The capital of Shushan in the city of Persia. Today, Iran. Ahmadinejad knows very, very well where he is located, and it is located in the same place where 2,500 years ago a similar story of the destruction of the Jewish people was unfolding. In a sense, the leader of the Jewish people, Mordecai, comes to his niece, Esther, who somehow, by the way, is another word for God,
absolutely,
somehow is in the palace of the king. She's made her way there, and Mordecai comes to her in chapter 4:14 and says, listen, Esther, you're the queen. Go talk to the king. Let him know what Haman's plans are. And she's like, well, you know, procedure and protocol doesn't really permit me to approach him. And, you know, maybe she's also thinking, what will the polls say? You know, how is it going to look? You know, how about appearances? I could lose my job or my head. You understand? So she's like, I'm not so sure. And Mordecai says something very important. He says, Esther, he says, don't worry about it. He says, redemption and salvation will come from the Jewish people from somewhere else. He says, but what will happen to you? And what will happen to your heritage and your lineage? In other words, wiped out. He says, because don't worry, Jewish people will be okay. That's God's promise. What will happen to you? And she gets it. She understands. And at that moment, there's a turning point. And she says, okay, let's kick into action. Let's get busy. And I'll do this, and you're going to do that. Simon, we are standing at a moment in history where all of us are Esther. We're all in an Esther moment. And God is providing all of us with what? An opportunity to respond. Each and every one of us has been given that opportunity to respond. There's no such thing as sitting on the fence. There's no such thing as having a breadth of opinion about Israel. I said to somebody recently, I said, it's not a question of like, well, there's kind of like a spectrum of right-wing and left-wing perspectives on Israel. No. Right now, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. That's it. There's no right and left. It's right and wrong. That's it. And we are all in an Esther moment. We are all living in chapter 4:14 of the book of Esther. Go and look at that. Go open up that book. Take a look and find your place in it. It's our time to respond.
Yeah. And we've got a clip to go to now that's called the Pillar of Defense, Arab Voice muted as the Gaza conflict continues. And this really does show the threats that Israel faces. And we are very much in an Esther moment in 2012.
As the Israel-Gaza situation enters its second week, one voice has been notable only by being muted.
while Iran is reportedly shipping extra warheads to the Gaza Strip. An Arab world which had substantially furnished fighters in the Syrian conflict with weapons has here maintained a decidedly low profile.
Today, the Israelis are betting on the missile stocks of the Palestinians to be finished. The border should be open to deliver more missiles to the Palestinian resistance in Gaza. Where are the Arabs who are paying money to purchase weapons and send it by ships to the rebels in Syria? They are scared to send one bullet to Gaza because there is Israel and there is the American administration, and they will be questioned by the CIA.
As well as calling for increased Arab intervention, Hezbollah chief Nasrallah called for an end to the 6-year blockade on the Gaza Strip. Hamas chief Khaled Mishal had made similar comments on Monday, stating that his movement was committed to securing a truce with Israel, but insisted the Jewish state lifted what he referred to as its blockades. Arab leaders have spoken up to denounce the Israeli assault on Gaza, but it remains to be seen whether they will ally this with tangible action. The last time Israel launched a full-on assault on Gaza was 2008, but the political realities on the ground are now very different. The Arab Spring brought revolution to countries across the region, and Egypt, one of only 2 Arab countries to have a peace agreement with Israel, is now being led by the Muslim Brotherhood, of which Hamas is an offshoot. Qatar also showed support when the Gulf nations emir visited Gaza last month, the first head of state to do so since Hamas took control. However, whether this will translate into more than the largely diplomatic measures taken thus far, which have included Egypt recalling their ambassador to Tel Aviv, will become clear in the coming days. As you can see from that clip, that tensions are extremely high in the Middle East right now, and the Iranians look like they are about to stoke this conflict even more. And we got a clip to go to really show that it's the Iranians that are very much behind Hamas and stoking this violence and terrorism against Israel. An Iranian 150-ton freighter has reportedly departed the Bandar Abbas port with a cargo of 220 short-range missiles and 50 improved long-range Fajr 5 rockets bound for the Gaza Strip. According to news agencies, the ship has turned towards the Bab al-Mandeb Straits and the Red Sea. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ramin Mehmanparast refused to comment on the allegations, but stressed the importance of the Palestinians being able to defend themselves and that all countries should defend the rights of the Palestinian people. To throw Israeli surveillance off the trail, the ship started its voyage under the name Vali-e-Asra, being swiftly renamed Cargo Star and hoisting the flag of Tuvalu, a tiny South Pacific nation lying between Hawaii and Australia, with whom Iran has a close relationship. Sources indicate that 4 large Sudanese ships are waiting to offload the missiles mid-sea to prospectively unload them for transportation to the Gaza Strip, potentially through the smuggling tunnels running from Sinai. If the cache arrives successfully, will signal a radical upshift in arms capability, as the Fajr 5s have 200-kilo warheads, a sizable increase in the 175 kilos delivered by the rockets in current use by the Palestinian terrorists of the Gaza Strip. Any such rocket landing in an urban area would cause wide-scale devastation. Tehran is sending the supplies to replenish the stocks of its allies, the Palestinian Hamas and Jihad Islami, who've expended much of their arsenal in the 7-day-old round-the-clock attacks. The move has caused tensions between Iran and Egypt, whose new government is eager to show themselves in a responsible light, while Tehran is intent on escalating the situation. Iran has previously denied it had directly supplied Hamas with the Iranian-made Fajr 5 missiles that have hit near Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Welcome back to the Middle East Report. Shmuel, when we look at Hamas and we realise that Hamas is a terrorist organisation, and in their covenant charter they call for the destruction of the State of Israel and they call for genocide against the Jewish people worldwide, which, as I said to the Deputy Israeli Ambassador Alon on my programme the other night, it's almost written almost exactly the same as Hitler's Mein Kampf. And most people also don't understand the fact when they look at the mainstream media, they look at the news reports, they don't see that Hamas fire their rockets and missiles from schools and from hospitals and from mosques, use children and women as human shields. Surely the international community can do more to actually put pressure on Hamas to stop these rockets and missiles.
Absolutely. And, for one thing, for example, is I'd want to take a look at the balance sheet. I'd add up how much money they've spent on rockets firing into Israel. Each of those rockets could cost between hundreds to thousands of dollars. Total up that number and then say, what have you been spending your money on? Where are your hospitals in Gaza? Where are your higher education? Where's your infrastructure? Clean water. It's a third world country, and you're spending money on rockets to terrorize Israel. This is an insult. And anybody who is supporting that kind of a government, they're a hypocrite.
Yeah. Very well said. And we're down to the last 2.5 minutes of the programme, which I very much enjoyed this interview. But how can our viewers who see the rockets, the missiles falling on southern Israel, have a passion and love for Israel and the Jewish people respond at this time, which you describe as an Esther moment?
There are many ways. There are many important organizations around the world and in Israel that are protecting Israeli lives. Our organization happens to be one of them. We're doing something which is very, pardon the pun, concrete and very tangible. At the end of the day, it's about making sure that people have a safe space to go to when the rockets are falling. Be part of our team. Look at our website at operationlifeshield.org. I think it's going to be on your screen. Take a look at that. If you'd like to make a donation, you can do that directly on site. If you'd like to do it through the ICEJ, for example, in your local country here in the UK or anywhere around the world, you can designate your gift to Operation Life Shield and do it through the ICEJ, the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem. You can do it through your local Jewish federations, through however you want to do it. Or you can go to our website and donate online or contact us by email. We'll be happy to give you more information on how to be part of what we're doing. Be active, participate in saving lives and protecting the Jewish people in Israel.
And Shmuel, within 30 seconds, how important is it that Christians get off the fence and really stand with Israel and the Jewish people at this really important moment?
Well, I just came back from Germany last week, in which they expressed to me that had Christians really gotten involved in the 20s, they would have had a voice in the 30s. They would have had a voice to stand up against Hitler. However, they did not mobilize themselves in the 20s, and we know what happened. This is the time to get involved.
Because the stakes are incredibly high, aren't they?
This is it. We're at the final exam. We're in the final question of the final exam. It all comes down to this.
Rabbi Shmuel, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Middle East Report. And whenever you're next back in London, please let me know, because I would love to have you back on the programme, and I know our viewers would as well.
Thank you. Good to be here. God bless you. God bless your viewers.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you all for watching today's programme. We can see the escalation of this conflict. This is a pre-recorded programme. It's filmed on Wednesday morning. You'll be watching this on Friday, so we don't know at this moment in time whether Israel are going to send in their ground troops, and it's a very, very scary moment for the whole of Israel, certainly for the 75 reservists who are massing on the border in Gaza. So let's pray for Israel, let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and let's pray for the courageous men and women who are defending the state of Israel.
עמך סגרנו, תרנו אנא בכוח גדולת ימינך, תרצה רוחה, קבל רינת עמך סגרנו, תרנו גיבור ראשי חוקך כבבת שערי רחם דרם רחמי צדקתך תמיד גמלם חסין קדוש ברוב טובך נאל עבדך יחיד גאה למחפש זוכר קדושתך שבתנו גבר ושמע צעקתנו יודע תענו Shema